Alright, welcome back everyone. In this video, our goal is to add some visual variation to each landscape layer texture inside of our created landscape material so that the tiling issues you see before you right now are greatly reduced. In the last video, we made it so that we could change up the size of our different texture layers here, and that's all well and good, but you still see a lot of repeating texture tiles going on here. It doesn't matter if it's the grass, which I have painted here, the mud, or some rock. It still looks rather repetitive and not realistic at all. So this video, we're going to go ahead and fix that. Now, good news is, for those of you that took the material shortcut, this is already done for you in your landscape material. However, those of you that went through the pains of creating this landscape material from scratch, stay right here because this is what we need to do to change up our repeating texture tiles. All right, still with me? Let's do it. Jump on into Content, Landscapes, Materials, double click on your M material created, and you will see from my 10,000 foot view, this is what I currently have in here. I broke off my mud and my grass textures and I put them up high right here because we're going to be adding some nodes right below our grass sample right here to help break up the texture tiling for our grass. And then we're going to apply it to our different layers. All right, I'm going to firstly hold down the T key, T as in Thomas, and left click to bring in a texture sample node. And with that guy selected, over in the details panel, we're going to slot in a texture known as T_macro variation. This guy right here, as you can see, it should come from the starter content per our tooltip. And this is the one we're going to use to kind of break up the repetitive nature. All right, now we want to change up the size of this particular texture as well. So I'm going to right click and type in COORDS, just chords, not landscape layer chords. I just want to look for texture coordinates. Texture coordinate node. This guy we can plug into our UV. And here we can plug in a U and a V value to change up the size of our texture sample. In this case, I'm going to change this to be 0.2 in the U and 0.2 in the V. And that's going to make it look like we've zoomed in on our texture a little bit. And you can see the difference if I click this texture sample down arrow and then back up again. Kind of does this refreshing little thing, and you can see what that now looks like. Now, I'm also going to drag off of our RGB value right here, and I'm going to bring in an add node. And we're going to add the value with this selected. We're going to change the const B value to be 0.5. And now if I click this little drop down arrow in the node, you can see what that does visually to our texture sample. It kind of just brightens it up a little bit. Okay, now with these three nodes created, we're going to copy them and paste them 2 more times. However, before we do this, I want to select my texture sample node one more time, and I want to change this sampler source in the details panel to be shared wrap. Now, in fact, we need to do this with every texture sample node that we have in our material. And the reason for that is if I go back to my landscape, I have not shown you this yet, but we're currently restricted to how many different layers we can paint on any given component. You paint 2, you're all right. You paint 3, you're restricted to 4. And then when you go beyond that, you start to see gray checker box everywhere. By changing your texture samples, all of them, to a sampler source of shared wrap, you can have up to 128 different texture layers painted onto a component. So why don't we do that now before we forget? So I am going to left click and hold down my control key to left click all of my various texture samples here that exist in this landscape material. And with all of them selected, we're going to change their sampler source over to the shared wrap option. All right, make sure that you've gone ahead and done that. Okay. Now also, before I copy this, I'm going to leave a node comment here. I'm going to right click on this node, and I want to put in the value of 0.2 as my node comment so I can see at a glance without having to actually select this node what value I have applied to that. This add node already shows what number I'm adding by. Okay, next I'm going to left click, drag. I'm going to highlight those 3 nodes, Control C to copy, and I'm going to paste it by Control V-ing once and then twice. So we got 3 of these out here, and the only difference between these is I'm going to change this texture coordinate value right here to be 0.05 in the U and the V, and I'll update this node comment here to be 0.05, and then for this texture coordinate node I'm going to change it to 0.003. And I'm going to update the little note right here as well to 0.003. Okay, and you don't see these changes reflected in these little thumbnails unless you click on that little drop down arrow a couple times. So you can see this is kind of somewhat zoomed in. This is going to be even more zoomed in. And then this is like extremely zoomed in down here. Okay, so what we're going to do with these bottom 2 is we're going to multiply the result of both of these. And we're going to hold down the M key and left click to bring in a multiply node. Like so. And then we're going to hold down the M key right about here and left click. And we're going to multiply the result of this and the result of that. And you can see what this is going to kind of do to our grass layer. It's going to add some splotchiness to it. Now, it's not going to show up white like this. In fact, it's going to more just add the splotchiness to it. But we need to actually multiply the result of all this by our texture sample here. So let's hold down the M key one more time and left click. And this is going to plug into the B. And we want to plug this RGB value now into the A, but I don't want to snip this wire. I want to drag this wire out to here. So let's hold down Control, left click, and you can drag this and plug that into that multiply node. And now we can left click, drag our RGB into here. And if we click our little preview thumbnail there, it doesn't look like much yet. But if we save this, shaders will compile. This will take a little while. We'll pause it right here and I'll rejoin you when the shaders have finished recompiling. See you in a moment. All right, so check it out. Look at our grass now. That looks much more realistic with some splotchiness peppered throughout. However, you'll notice that our mud and our rock still looks terrible. So what we're going to do is we're going to make life a little bit easier on ourselves. We're going to apply this same node network to our different texture layers. So we're not going to do this all on camera because that would bore you to tears. But what you can do is you can collapse some of these down like this. You want to grab all these nodes right here. Take note of all the ones that I'm highlighting and note that these are adds right here and these are multiplies. Left clicking, dragging, and I'm going to Control C to copy. And I'm going to move my mud up above like so. And I'm going to Control V to paste. And then I'm going to get these in such a position where I hook this up in a very similar manner. Holding down Control, I'm going to move this right there. My RGB for my mud is going to go into there. And this should all be well and good for my mud now. Now, I do want to place some comment box around each of these. So I'm going to left click, drag, hit the C key. And I'm going to just type in mud up here by double clicking on that. This is going to be our mud. And with this selected, I'm going to change the comment color here to be something, I don't know, somewhat brown-ish. Come on now. And great, my engine just happened to freeze as I'm picking a color. There we go, purple, nice. Purple. No, we want something a little bit more brown, like, let's go with something like that. Okay. And now what you're going to want to do is apply this to all of your different texture layers here, not the normals down here, but all of these up here. So I'm gonna do this off camera and we'll rejoin you when I finish with that process. And here we are. I would say this does not look too bad. We have that network of nodes hooked up to all of our different texture layer samples now. And we can see some splotchiness, some random variety added to our grass, our mud, our rock, and I put some path out here as well. Not too shabby. Now just to recap, here in our M material created, you should have this hooked up to all of your regular texture sample nodes, not your normal texture samples down here. So if I kind of wheel on back, this is going to be the 10,000 foot view that I have hooked up to all, what was that, 7 different texture samples that we had out there? Now, if you look in my level here, and I'm going to jump back to my level here really quickly, you'll notice that some of the splotchiness, some of the variety looks the same between our grass and our rock and our mud and whatnot. Now, if you really want to change up the visual variety between it all, it's going to be a combination of the size that you make each texture here, and you can control that through this scalar parameter hooked up to each of your node networks here, and also with some of the texture coordinate sizes that you have linked up to these MT macro variation nodes right here. So you can play around with some of these variables here to see what kind of results you get, and maybe you want to add different numbers here. I just had 0.5 going across the board, and I didn't change this between my mud and my grass. It's all the same values and whatnot. Alright, so guys, that is going to do it all for this one. I'm going to save my level one more time here. We've got some texture variation going on. In the next video, we will explore painting restrictions. See you there.